Parents of Reddit, what's the funniest reason you've been called into school to collect your child? I got a phone call earlier this year from the school nurse, saying she was concerned because my son had passed out while in the lunch line. I went to pick him up and he seemed a little dazed, but okay. My kid couldn't remember anything about what happened beforehand, so I made an appointment with his pediatrician for an hour later. Right as we were getting ready to leave, he sheepishly said, "Mom, I just remembered that right before I passed out, we were playing a game to see who could turn their face the reddest." So, my kid had me thinking he had a brain tumor, but no, he just held his breath until he passed out, and not a single other kid thought they should mention that to the teacher. I was in an early morning college class, and when I got out I realized I had missed calls, texts, and emails from my daughter's preschool. A voicemail said she had been throwing up and to please hurry and come get her. When I got to the school, the receptionist showed me to a room where my daughter was sat with a trash can on her lap. She told me my daughter kept announcing she was throwing up and then would cough and spit into the trash can. She had no fever and was otherwise cheerful and talkative. I signed her out, got her outside and into my car, where she jumped forward and kissed my cheek and told me she missed me and where would I like to go for lunch. That kid busted herself out of preschool to finagle a lunch date with me. It worked. I got a call that my son was sick and that I had to come pick him up. He was completely fine that morning. I asked the nurse, "He really can't go back to class," and she said, "He says he's really sick." Fine. I picked him up and on the walk home I asked what was up. He said he had to fart really badly and didn't want to do it in class. I laughed and said okay. 2 days later I get another call to pick him up. So I got him, and it was for the same reason. I told him that it was funny once, but that from now on, if he needed to fart in class, he should go to the bathroom. LOL. Farting at home is best fart. I was called in because the elementary school was going on a field that my son forgot to give me the permission slip for. He decided to give forgery a whirl. This was in first grade, so the handwriting was awful. He also signed my name, Mom. My wife and her father's names both start with the same letter. A while back, he saw her signature and commented that it looked a lot like his. So she said, "That's because I forged your signature so much in school." I was the child. In 6th grade, I was 12. I was in my emo phase and was wearing a lot of black eyeshadow from Claire's. I guess I wasn't so good at my makeup yet because they called my mom into the office to discuss my injuries and who was hurting me. I also wore lots of eyeliner around that age. Teachers weren't fond of it, and my grades got a bit worse too, so they spoke to my parents, and they forbid me to use eyeliner for a while. My father wanted to confiscate it, but I gave him my mascara instead, because being male, he wouldn't know the difference. Then I rose to do my makeup every day in secret, and tell him that I just haven't washed it off since he took my eyeliner. That was in elementary school, early years. The principal called us and looked at us with a stern look of disapproval while telling us our son was using bad language. I then proceeded to explain to her that my wife and I only spoke French at home, and we did not have television. The only English our son had ever heard was at school, so I asked her what she was going to do about it. It was one of the shortest conversations I ever had with a principal. In my senior year of Hogskull, I was nearly not allowed to graduate, and my family was called because I forged my own name by writing in the Guardian section of a permission slip. I was 18. I was 18 and living on my own my senior year. I went to the nurse with a migraine and wanted to go home. She had no problem with agreeing to send me home, but she insisted I needed a guardian's permission. I had to call my aunt, who I hadn't lived with in months, to get permission. I also had my cell phone confiscated for checking it in between classes. The rule was that a parent had to come get it. I then informed the teacher that I had no guardians and I was, in fact, a legal adult. He gave the phone back at the end of class. My professor cited my mom because she said I was writing too slow and turned my test in right as the bell rang. My mom had to leave work early to hear about her child writing slow. The reason I was writing slow was because on my last test, I was docked points for handwriting. So this time I made sure I had the prettiest, most fanciest handwriting that teacher had ever seen. After that, the teacher stopped docking me points due to handwriting. When I went to school, Cursive was mandatory from 3rd grade onwards. If your work wasn't in cursive, it wasn't marked. Consequently, I now have shitty cursive handwriting. My little brother liked cheese and mustard sandwiches. So my mom made him cheese and mustard sandwiches for lunch. When the teacher asked why he didn't have any meat on his sandwich, he said either, "We can't afford meat," or, "My mom doesn't let me," or something like that. Whatever he said was enough to send CPS over to the house. Another time, he came to school saying that his mom loved Coke. That his mom said she's addicted to Coke. CPS was called again. They lived in a different area this time. Coca-Cola. My mom couldn't go a day without a Coke. So she joked that she was addicted to Coke. I do see the irony that she was actually addicted to a drug, just not the one CPS was worried about. In high school shop class, the teacher was upset at my friend because his work area was messy. The teacher said something like, "Would your mother tolerate this at home?" Kid responded, "My mother is always at the bar." Teacher walked away. I said, "Your mother works at the bar," he replied. Got him to stop talking. This makes me nervous. I work in a jail. Although, one time my son told his friend's mother that I drink and drive all the time. He didn't understand that Diet Coke wasn't generally included in that phrase. Funniest one I've ever heard, my kid's surprisingly well behaved. At school, was a parent having to come get their kid after they were caught selling imaginary friends to the younger students for $1 apiece. That kid's gonna become a business mogul someday. My son, 14, 8th grade, during class change walked into the boys' bathroom, put his hands over his head and while thrusting his hips in a humping motion told all the other boys in the room to "Protect your buttholes, gentlemen, here I come." The funniest part about it all, that exact same description was jotted down on the write-up slip. Even the principal couldn't stop laughing. I made the mistake of telling my stepdaughter about the professor I had in college that we knew never read our papers, so it turned into a class game to fit ridiculous sentences and bad jokes into the middle of them to see if we'd ever get caught. She apparently decided that was an amazing thing to do, and I got called for a phone conference because she turned in a history paper that was chock full of awful puns that were not appreciated. As a teacher, I would have definitely enjoyed marking this work. Unlucky with the audience. Nephew is staying with me for 2 months. I showed him Dexter's Laboratory for the first time. Next day they call me to pick him up because he would only say omelette du fromage to any interaction. Someone should have mocked him with, "That's all you can say," it would have stopped him. 13 years old daughter got sent to ISS. In there, they have the kids write an apology letter to the teacher and the class, I suppose to teach self-reflection, etc. She wrote, her words and punctuation. "Dear teacher, I already said I'm not going to write this fucking letter again. I'm not sorry for not doing my work. I have my reasons. No apologies. School didn't like it." How the hell am I supposed to yell at her? I mean, there's the profanity thing, but that's entirely ancillary. They send teenagers to the International Space Station as punishment? What a weird education system. No wonder they can't afford new teaching material. Oh my. I have 4 kids, all adults now, who are pretty high-spirited back in the day. My oldest son, however, wins the prize from an incident in 6th grade. I got a call one afternoon that he had been sent to the principal's office. Nothing new there. And I needed to come get him at once. Oh. He had mooned the 2nd graders. All of them. And their teachers. OMG, I totally forgot my son mooned a few kids back when he was in 1st grade. He apparently was digging a hole by bending over and scooping sand backwards between his legs, like how a dog digs. He's a scrawny, lanky kid, so pants that are long enough are always a bit loose around the waist. Well, his drawers must have slipped a bit, and one of the girls shouted, "Pull up your pants!" And he decided to pull down his underwear and shake his bottom at them. They laughed. The teacher on recess duty was crying laughing but figured she needed to pull the maturity card and had my son go back inside to the classroom before recess was over so his classroom teacher could explain why we don't show our bottoms in public. My son was in tears, the classroom teacher also was trying not to laugh, and I got the obligatory email saying, "Your child mooned the playground. We discussed why this was a poor choice of actions and your child expressed remorse and apologized to his classmates. We felt no further disciplinary action was needed at school." We had parent-teacher conferences the next day. Both teachers apologized for laughing, but couldn't help it because of all the kids at school. He was not the one they would have pegged as the playground mooner. A social worker who worked for a prison told me this story. A 17-year-old high school football player mooned a bus full of high school cheerleaders, was sent to prison for 18 months and had to register as a sex offender. Times have really changed. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.